Hi. Sorry, I'm just adjusting the camera. So I just finished The Adventures of Cordelia Swift, uh, Run and Hide, which is book one. This consists of four separate floppy books. As you can see here, this is part one and part two, part three, and finally part four. So I quite enjoyed this, which I warned you that I would likely enjoy all these books. Um, the first thing that I'm going to say is that it's a black and white comic, which is sort of quite novel these days, really. And um, the black and white works very well in terms of this world which Garvey has built, which is sort of like set in 1856 London with a touch of steampunk elements to it, but it never really goes over the top. There's a character that has sort of like a metal arm, and then there's sort of steampunky type um, vehicles, and there's geneticism and things like that, but it's not it's not pure steampunk stuff. So it is a relatable world. Um, Everyone loves a female protagonist, and Cordelia Swift is a pretty good one. Essentially, this is kind of like it's kind of like a Sherlock Holmes story that touches on those kind of um, uh, modern British literary myths. So, as you can probably tell from the title, it's called Run and Hide. So that gives you an allusion to the content of the story. It's not exactly what you think, though. There is no Dr. Jekyll in this. Mr. Hyde is never actually named. And there's actually kind of a bit of a twist in book four. Garvey sort of quite effectively leads you to believe that Swift is investigating these murders that we as an audience can deduce is sort of committed by this kind of Mr. Hyde type creature. But there is a bit of a twist, which I didn't actually see coming, and that is always fantastic. The other thing that I wanted to say is that the panel layouts here are genuinely very good. They are. It's very, very good panel to panel storytelling. It flows very well. There isn't sort of this urge to plaster every panel with dialogue. There are some pages which just use images to tell the story, which actually kind of reminded me of the way that Alan Moore handled the way that he told his storytelling in his earlier works. There is sort of a bit of you could draw, you could see that there is a touch of maybe League of Extraordinary Gentlemen here in terms of the themes and the characters. I think where that falls apart. This is what I'm talking about. The artist now, Bozic or Bozic. I'm not sure. Matt, you can probably clear that up. I think where that falls apart is some of the action sequences, particularly in book four. It's not as visceral as they probably could be, and that was the biggest downside for me. Bozic is an interesting artist. I wouldn't say that I am in love with his style, but what I can say is that some of it actually reminded me of sort of like a cross between John Romita Jr. and early Kirby. The way that he draws Swift, as you can see there, hopefully, it has a kind of a little bit of a Kirby element to it. The way that Kirby would draw women. Swift as a female protagonist is is a good one. You know, I saw some criticism of Hayley Atwell on the boards sort of earlier in the week, and she actually really reminded me of the way that Atwell played Agent Carter in Marvel's Agent Carter. Um, you know, she's not a there's no urge to sex her up or anything. She's just a really good detective, um, and she's sort of a bit of, you know, no nonsense. Doesn't take any shit. Um, the sort of interesting cultural themes that are raised is that she's actually an American, in London, and there we kind of begin to understand that she's not allowed to go back home, and her brother is also present in the story, and we get a bit of a flashback to her childhood as well. So there's beyond the actual world building, which the world is really interesting. There is obviously greater designs on the characters here. We also meet a character, Ping, who I guess sort of seems to be a little bit like Cordelia's Q, maybe. There's a sort of a superintendent character. The characters, what we get, we get a good sense of who they are, you know, and that's to Garvey's testament, that, you know, being able to write in 4 issues, to write those characters and get a good sense of who they are. This is probably because there's a bit of a play to archetypes there, but, you know, that's a pretty common conceit in all comics, so that's not a criticism at all. What else? Yes. So, I did have one small criticism, which is some of the dialogue, some of the writing in this is very good. That is not my criticism. You know, I can say that as a person who reads comics and books and you know, has a brain. Some of the writing is very good, but some of the kind, you know, this kind of steampunky British 1856 dialogue does fall flat for me, and I don't know if that's because I'm a foreigner. There's quite a lot of it, and I don't think that it needs to be removed at all, because it sets the world. But I think sometimes it could be used. There could be some tweaking. I think there's a tendency to maybe overuse that element a little bit. Apart from that, you know, I have very small criticisms about the dialogue. There's a very, very, very minor things. If I was an editor, very, very, very minor things that I would change. There's a few info dumps, but, you know, that's what we need. So my overall kind of review of this book 1, which I also seem to understand is actually the first thing that Matt wrote, is, you know, you've got to be impressed. You have to be impressed. You have to see how much thought and planning has gone into this, and how rich this world has the potential to be, and how you know, strong the character has the potential to be, particularly as a female character, and it is sort of, the gender politics is touched on a little bit in this, and it's sort of quite wonderful that Matt actually wrote this. So I would read more. You know, I think that Cordelia Swift has a future for sure. It's a very, in a way, it's sort of quite a Miller-esque high concept. You know, kind of no nonsense Sherlock-style detective in steampunk slash, literary London. But it's really cool. You guys should, if you haven't, buy it from Matt. I'm sure he'll be happy to give you a little golden signature, which is probably going to be worth, $5,000 in 40 years' time or something like that. But aside from that, it's a really good story, and you guys should read it. And next up, I'll be reviewing Chunks and Transfer and the other, which I'm looking forward to.